Hi, everyone, and welcome to our panel, Bridging the Gap Upper Middle Grade Literature. I am your moderator, Shannon Doleski. I'm the author of Mary Underwater. It's about a 14-year-old girl who builds and pilots a submarine to cross the Chesapeake Bay. We're going to introduce everybody, and then we're going to get started. Barbara, do you want to go first? Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Barbara D. I'm the author of now 10 books, including Maybe He Just Likes You. And I have another book coming out in September called My Life in the Fish Tank. And this one is about a family in which the oldest kid is diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and the family wants to keep it a secret.
Very cool. Okay, Kelly?
Hi, I'm Kelly Zatorksy. I'm a library media specialist at a middle school in Westport, Connecticut.
Thank you for being our teacher librarian rep, Kelly. Jess?
Hi, I am JMM Nuanez, but you can call me Jess, and I'm the author of Birdie and Me. And it's about a brother and a sister who go to live with two estranged uncles.
Very cool. Kristiana?
My name is Kristiana Sfirlea. I am the author of Legend of the Storm Sneezer, which is about a 13-year-old girl who sneezes a magical storm cloud at birth, and it's followed her around ever since.
Thank you for being our fantasy rep here. Paula?
Hi, I'm Paula Chase. I'm the author of soon to be 3 upper middle grades. The one coming out latest is Turning Point, and it's about 2 13-year-old girls and their summer journey. And the way that I'm tagging it is, when you can't be yourself, who should you be? And the turning point is trying to decide that.
That's amazing. And Paula is our resident expert on upper middle grade. Tori?
We're going to really get into that later, aren't we?
We are. I can't wait. Tori?
Hi, my name is Torrey Maldonado, and I'm the author of 3 upper middle grade books. My first book was Secret Saturdays. My second book is Tight. And my most recent book that just came out is called What Lane? And What Lane is a story of a mixed race boy. He's half black, half white. And he's trying to figure out in today's world, what lane is he supposed to ride in terms of his identity.
Wonderful. And I want to say that Tori writes short books, which I am a huge advocate for. I love short books, so he's your guy for that. We're going to start with what does the classification of upper middle grade mean to you in particular and your books? So let's start with Jess.
I would say for me, it's the quickest and easiest way is, in my mind, it's just like YA, but your protagonist tends to be 11 and 12 years old. And so it's kind of the quick and dirty way, like that I was able to distinguish like the complexity of not only tone and maybe writing style, but also maybe subject matter. From books that tend to have protagonists that are like maybe in 3rd or 4th grade. That's like, in my mind, it's that gap coming out of true like elementary school, but you haven't hit high school yet. Mm-hmm. So yeah. That's for me. In my book, I mean, the Jack is 12, so but she's kind of comes with a lot of complexity and a lot of questions, and she's gone through some trauma and has a lot of challenges. So it was easy for me to see it as upper middle grade.
Cool. Tori, how about you? What does upper middle grade mean to you?
When I think of upper middle grade, I think of a lot of different things, but the most immediate term that comes to mind is crossroads. I feel that upper middle grade students, young readers, they're trying to figure out who they want to be. They're trying to figure out, who are the people around them. And they're a lot like that Robert Frost poem, where they're just trying to pick the right lane, the right direction to go in. So I feel like all of the authors here, I feel like myself, we write about helping young people navigate the complex social, emotional terrain of being a middle school student.
Yeah, middle school is hard, like really hard.
Yeah, you couldn't pay me to go back there.
I'm with you. Barbara, how about you? What does upper middle grade mean to you?
Well, I like what Tori just said about being in the middle. But just because you're in the middle, it doesn't mean that you're lost in the middle. You can be exploring that terrain in a way that tells you who you are. And I think the upper middle grade end of that spectrum, kids are still kids. They're not teens. They're processing stuff in a very kid-like way, but they are confronting things like sexual harassment, mental illness, sexual orientation, serious physical illnesses, and they're starting to pull away from their parents a little bit. They may be questioning the other adults in their lives, including teachers, and they may not be comfortable sharing every aspect of their lives with these adults. So they're turning inward and they're turning to their friends. And so, that can be a struggle for them. So, I think that our books are a great way to help them navigate this terrain and work out some of these questions that they may have about their own identity, even before they hit the teen years.
Oh yeah, I love that. I know I use books to like stuff I don't want to ask my parents, but like I still want to know, and it's a little more intimate than like a Google search.
Right.
Yeah, I really like that. Yeah. Kristiana, how about you and fantasy? How does that change it, and where do you all fit in with upper middle grade?
I think with upper middle grade, I always think of it kind of as the end of childhood, but you're still not quite ready to let go yet. So it's kind of that really delicate transition between you want to grow up, but you still want to stay the same. So it's kind of like what you guys have been saying about how you still have that kind of childlike mindset, but you're still, starting to understand and grasp bigger concepts and harder concepts. And I think that comes through in fantasy just as easily as it does in contemporary if it's written right. So
yeah, definitely. Yes. Oh, I like that. Paula, how about you?
So I may have thought about this a little bit, but no, it's funny because for me, I've always written this. It's just never had a name. So a lot of what I do and the reason why I love this particular topic is because for me, it's about finding my own lane. Like Tori said, it's about trying to understand what exactly I've written, because clearly right now, publishing doesn't know what it is. And so in particular, I've just had this epiphany, and Tracy Batiste and I were talking about it, and I realized that there's young adult, which to me is ages 13 to 15, because those ages are really caught in the gap between traditional middle grade and young adult. So I see young adult is 13 to 15, but I see upper middle grade because there is a distinction for me, and that's 11 to 13. But the content is usually too mature. That's subjective, but a little too mature for the traditional middle grade reader, which is an 8 or 9-year-old, or at least starts that low. Mm-hmm. So that's how I see it. For me, it's trying to define that so that educators can help these students find their books, but also so that I know what I'm writing.
Mm. I love that. And I was like casually lurking the whole time you guys were having that discussion. And I really love it because she's 14, and I got a trade review that said it was that the kissing was not appropriate for 14-year-olds. And I was like, are you sure about that? And so,
because they're doing it.
I had some thoughts about that, but yeah. Kelly, how about you as a librarian and educator? What do you think upper middle grade means to you?
So right now I work in a building with grades 6, 7, 8, and I'm a former 3rd grade teacher. And so it's really interesting. It's probably one of the hardest things to define. And I think that's why it's really difficult for parents, publishers, readers to sort of figure out what it is and how to find what they need. I think that idea of a young adult genre is amazing because I find that my incoming sixth graders are incredibly different from the beginning of the year seventh graders, from the beginning of the year eighth graders. They're in different places in their lives. Now, of course, there's a range within that group too, within the incoming sixth graders and what their experience is. Are they the youngest in a family, the oldest in a family? What's their home life like? But basically, I think that middle grade readers are looking for a couple of things in a book. They're looking for a way to connect with the world around them, to sort of navigate what this world is and what's happening in their own sort of communities, but also in places far away from them, to explore those foreign ideas and experiences they haven't had themselves, or places they've never been, people that they haven't met. But also, which I think is really important about fantasy, is it's a time and a place to escape from some of the things that are just really hard when you're in middle school, and a lot of things that they need to just have a little time away from what's really going on for them and all the things they're trying to figure out.
Yeah, I like that. So how can I ask a follow-up question? How do you have different like age ranges in your library?
So we don't identify anything in an age range at this point. Sometimes when we're picking things that are like book club books, where we're really offering a more narrow choice, we might say that there are some explicit language in this, just kind of give a little bit of a warning. Or if we see a sixth grader pick up something that might have a very controversial topic, there are a lot of books that eighth graders read that have a lot of very serious dating, or even something like rape might be discussed. And so we might say, you know what, bring this book home and talk to your family about it, but we really don't categorize anything outwardly on the shelves.
Okay. All right. Thanks for letting us know. So this goes for authors. Did you intend or set out to write this age group? I'm going to start with Paula because she touched on it a little bit earlier. But yeah, did you try to write for this age group? Paula?
I mean, I didn't try in that way where I set out to write for middle grade. I started out, my first series back in the early 2000s was actually young adult, but people would call it sweet YA. And I found that a really odd term because, first of all, if you're going to label something sweet, then that means that there's an opposite to that. And so that's to indicate that all the other YA out there was the opposite of sweet, whatever that means. So, but that was what it was called, and I didn't argue. But then people would say, you really sort of have a middle grade voice, and maybe you should write for a younger audience. And so when I came back and wrote So Done, the characters just felt right to me to be 13 years old. But then I knew, even then, I'm like, well, this isn't really middle grade because these books are usually, a much younger protagonist. So again, it was never purposeful to fit into a certain genre, but it was purposeful to write for that age group because I love that age group. I love the discovery. I love the friction that tends to go on in friendships. That's my wheelhouse. That's where I'm comfortable, and that's what I like to explore. So in that regard, it was very purposeful.
Okay, I like that. Yeah, and I think it's such a pivotal time. Why aren't more books about this time? Everything changes. It's so huge. Barbara, how about you? Did you set out to write for this age group?
I did, but when I first started writing, I was thinking that I wanted to write funny, and my first few books were mostly humorous, and then my oldest kid got very sick. He got cancer, and this was about 6 years ago, and I started to realize that kids go through stuff even when they're kids, and that, books are a way of helping kids navigate those waters. And I was trying too hard to just be funny. I really wanted to use the humor to explore some other things that were more serious. And so that kind of pulled me a little bit toward the upper end of the middle grade spectrum, because I was dealing with more complicated, more complex, and sometimes even more serious topics. But I'm still using a lot of humor in what I write, because I think that middle grade or even upper middle grade kids respond to humor and need it. Because I think you know, you can't just write a depressing book in the same way that you can if you're writing strictly YA. I think for this age group, they need to have other threads, including humor, in these explorations that we're doing. So I've migrated over to the more serious and the slightly older end, but I'm still using a lot of humor.
I'm so sorry that that happened, but it's so nice that you both found some, I don't know, something to help you get through that and help other kids too.
I think kids go through stuff, and I was sort of shielding myself from exploring some of those topics by thinking I could only write funny. And the more I started thinking about this, the more I saw about what kids actually go through in their everyday lives and the role that books can play in helping them deal with it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Jess, how about you? Did you set out to write upper middle grade?
Definitely no. But I have a really hard time with setting out to write a story with anything in mind. A character has to kind of come to me first, and generally they kind of come to me out of the blue. Not 100% formed, but with me kind of knowing very, very quickly, like within an hour of free writing, their age and the essence of who they are. And so Jack, the protagonist of my book, like as soon as I saw her, I knew she was 12. And I knew that she had taken on a lot of responsibility, that she had been acting as a caregiver for kind of a long time. And so I just kind of went into, I always do a ton of free writing before I kind of start writing the bulk of the book. And so I don't think I had a really good sense of like maybe what upper middle grade or anything, you know, was. As far as like labels, I don't really think about any of that stuff until way later. Like, you know, trying to convince an editor that I know what I'm talking about later. So it's definitely no, but it's very helpful now. I feel like definitely talking to kids about it, trying to market it, and definitely trying to get it in the right hands regardless of the age of the person. Actually, it's been actually most helpful when encountering an adult that's wondering whether or not they should read my book. And I think especially adults who I think upper middle grade is kind of interesting because for maybe some people who aren't as familiar with the publishing world, and maybe is outside of the teaching world, they hear middle grade and maybe they think like some of the like sort of what Barb was talking about, some of the sort of classic middle grade books that are more jokey, that can fall in there, and which are also awesome and everything, but maybe, you know, an adult thinks, well, why would I even read that? You know, there's no way for them to relate to a joke or a book that has like a lot of jokes. Okay. So that's why it's been helpful for me, but I definitely, it was probably years before I even thought about that.
So Jack was like, listen, I'm 12.
It's very, I know, I wish I keep saying that I'm going to come up with an alternative, like, because the way I describe that I write, it makes me sound crazy, but I don't know how else to say it. But I basically, it's like they come to me and then I just start writing their story, and I don't have, which is a very, very inefficient way. I do not recommend it at all for anybody. But yeah, I'm happy to be here though. I really like the upper middle grade section. It's awesome.
Yeah. Well, we're happy to have you. You're inspired. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the word. Tori, how about you? Did you set out to write this age group?
You know, to keep it 100% real,
Yeah.
you know, when I think about my trajectory personally, you know, I'm happy that I lived past 18 years old. You know, where I am now is totally unplanned, and it's the same with my writing. I'm a teacher. I've been teaching for over 20 years, and the former chancellor of New York City schools and also the current chancellor shouted me out as a top author for culturally responsive literature. And I'm like, woo, that's so awesome, right? But when I was a kid, you know, I hated books. And it's not because I was a reluctant reader. I don't buy into that phrase, reluctant readers. We just haven't paired the right book with the right, with the kid. So what happened was in 1988, Life magazine came out with this photo spread of my housing projects, Red Hook housing projects in Brooklyn. And they called us the crack capital of the United States and one of the 10 worst neighborhoods in the country. And I needed an escape. So when Barbara was talking about, you know, being funny, you know, I needed funny when I was growing up. When, you know, you were talking about fantasy, I needed fantasy. And so that shaped my and guided my writing. I thought I was going to be the next Rick Riordan. Yeah, I thought I was going to write like the Lightning Thief series. But it took a village to raise a child, right? That's what I'm saying. And it took a village to raise me. And what that taught me is that I have another saying that I add to that. If a village raises a child, often the child will have a village mentality. So what happened was when I sat down to write, I always ended up writing about the complexities of real life and as it related to young people. So here I am, you know, before my first book, and I'm writing an article for this magazine. And the article is about the men in my family and how there weren't any, or if they were around, they were summertime men. They were around some of the time. And how that abandonment and that absence and that flakiness created a tendency in me to abandon relationships, be them professionally, personally, to be absent, to be flaky. And I was writing this serious article when a boy, one of my students, he's a 6th grader, now he's much older, probably has way more hair on his head than me. And he comes into my classroom and he says, Mr. T, and that's what my kids call me, Mr. T, even though I don't have any bling. But I'm telling everybody here, if I win any Newberries or any of the other awards, I'm gonna turn them into neck chains, and my kids, you know, they really gonna call me Mr. T. And so what happened was he comes into the class and he goes, and it's empty, no one's there, just me on my lunch break, and he says, Mr. T, can I talk to you? I said, sure, come on. And he does something really odd. He closes the door. And then he walks, and then as you see most public school classes, there are 2 doors, one in the front, one in the back, and then there's the coat closets in the middle. He walks strategically and puts himself right there in the middle of the coat closet so no one can see him. And he starts crying. And I jumped up and I go to him, and I probably violated some code of conduct because he started crying and put his head on my shoulder, and you know, I hugged him back, and he says, my father's gone. My father's gone. And his tears became like a flood that hit me so hard that it smashed through the article that I was trying to write. And it made me realize I need to be Jessica Seinfeld. The way Jessica Seinfeld creates these brownies and slips in the broccoli, I need to tell the story of my article about the men's influence on my life, but in a way that he would read it. So I wrote Secret Saturdays for him. And what happened was the 6th grade market ate it up, but it also got a YA award, the ALA Quick Pick for reluctant readers. So that's why I guess I'm here, because my stuff like moves, you know, from 6th grade, 5th grade, up until like 8th grade, 9th grade. So yeah, I didn't set out to be here. I thought I was going to be Tori, Rick Riordan.
I love it. And you know, when you do win that Newbery, I'm gonna just use that clip you just said and put it everywhere because that was amazing.
Can we
That
have a
was
Newberry party though? And like, if I do win something like that, can we all here get back together and we could all like, have a virtual cupcake with each other?
Definitely. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yes. That was great. Kristiana, how about you? Did you set out to write for this age group?
I didn't. I set out to write the book that I always wanted to read in middle school, and it turned out that it was upper middle grade because there just wasn't any. And I think kids really, really need those books. So it was kind of a subconscious thing, Yeah,
I'm with you. That's awesome. So,
Shannon.
Yeah.
Just real quick, I wanted to piggyback on something that Tori said because I think it's important. It's the fact that you won something for being culturally responsive. And I think we probably don't think about this enough, but he and I feel the same way about the term reluctant reader. I don't like it because I do think that one of the challenges is that, we have to have these boxes. It helps us to categorize things. But the reality is that, if a 14-year-old wants to read a book about a 12-year-old because that happens to be an experience that they want to see, it's hard because the covers, might skew too young or, it's pink and boys may not want a pink book. All of those things matter. So being culturally responsive and other types of responsive to readers, I think it's really important for us to get rid of this thought that kids are reluctant. Kids just want to find something that resonates with them. And, I'm hoping that by us constantly talking about the availability of these books, that it'll help a little bit.
I'm with you. Yeah, no, that's perfect. I agree with that.
I have to thank Paula. Can I thank Paula? First, I have to say I'm a fanboy. Everybody here. Paula knows how much I love her, and so someone just tried to buy me a hat, and they said my head's too big. Well, now my head's even bigger. That Paula gave me that compliment.
Oh gosh, I love it. So, speaking of tweens, us as readers, were you a huge reader? What did you read? The options have totally changed, I know, from when I was a child. So let's talk about you guys as children, tweens. Kelly, do you want to start? What kind of reader were you?
I was a reader for a short time before I stopped reading for a long time, actually. And when I was pretty much in middle school, I was a huge R.L. Stine fan, Fear Street. Always had to keep me on a cliffhanger. The only thing that could keep me reading was something where I couldn't put it down. And then, I tried and dabbled in the Sweet Valley High books because that was something that was in the top sellers for our age group at the time. But they didn't hold my interest as much as anything that was a thriller. So I think it's going to be really fun it's really fun for me to see some of my colleagues writing some thrillers for this age group too. That is really not something is meant for really upper grade to young adult or adult, and isn't really the second and third grade reader, but something in between that meets that need too. But then I really didn't read for fun again until I became a teacher, and then found that was, again, like you guys have all been saying, it's a way in and a way to connect with kids. And to figure out who they are and to help them figure out who they are. So it helped me get back into reading because I wanted to be able to have the right things in my pocket to offer.
Yeah, I like that. And I think you and Lorian is one of our other founders of this, and they work together. And she said, you were talking about how elementary students read, high school students read, but middle schoolers, it's doesn't exist. Yeah, so I guess our job is to make them stay, right?
Yeah, it's just to add on to that, it's very interesting. Yeah. We've done a little bit of a study of our circulation numbers, and in 6th grade they're very high, and then they start to slow down. And I think it has a lot to do with a lot of the other workloads that are put on them, but also about their outside interests. So we need to keep them.
Yes, we do. Yeah, I'm with you. Barbara, how about you? Were you a reader?
I was the kind of kid who, brushed my teeth while reading a book. I was obsessive about reading. I read constantly. And then I hit the tween years, and there just weren't books for me then. I mean, I think I read A Tree Grows in Brooklyn about 83 times. Because it was that sweet spot. I remember reading Catcher in the Rye and it going over my head because there was some weird stuff in it that I didn't quite get, even though I liked the voice. And I tried stuff. I tried historical novels. They didn't quite do it for me. So I had like a reading drought for a few years there. And it was really sad because I was the kind of kid who, needed books. And it wasn't until high school that I sort of started reading for pleasure again. But that is one of the reasons that I want to write for this group, because I saw my own kids going through this. When my sons were this age, they started discovering science fiction and fantasy, but my daughter wanted to read realistic fiction, and there just weren't enough books that met her needs. So that was one of the things that I was thinking about when I was thinking about writing for this age group.
Yeah, very cool. I like it. Jess, how about you? Big reader?
Not at all. No, I was read too, definitely through elementary school, and read a little bit on my own in elementary school. R.L. Stine. I remember having tons of Goosebump books. And then when I hit, it was almost like on the dot 6th grade, I was way too busy. I was playing a ton of sports, and if I wasn't playing sports, I was playing video games, which was kind of, that was kind of the joke with the picture that I submitted, that I hated being in front of the camera, and that, a lot of times I see these awesome pictures of like authors when they were kids, like reading somewhere. You're not going to find any picture of that of me. But yeah, me sitting and playing my Game Boy for sure. My sister and I, when we were in middle school, we used to hang out at our elderly neighbor's house. And she was an avid, and as far as I know still is, an avid Danielle Steele fan, and bought every book that would come out. And so she had them lined up on her shelf. And so strangely enough, when I was in middle school, I read a ton of Danielle Steele just because we used to hang out over at her house, and she used to like give us chocolate, which was like the main thing that we liked being over there for. But I didn't understand anything that was going on, and I didn't become a true reader until college. And my roommate was a big reader all growing up, and was just reading all the time, and we became best friends. And that was like when I decided to give reading a try again. And then haven't stopped since. But no, in middle school,
not into it.
Couldn't care less. I don't think I finished even one book in high school the entire time, even though I got straight A's. I knew how to kind of wheel my way around. Not recommending that to anybody. But,
so there is a way back to it.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
You can circle back.
Yeah, I was a huge Danielle Steele fan when I was in middle school. So
that's so funny.
I read everything. So Kristiana, how about you? Big reader?
So I grew up homeschooled, so of course we read books all the time. My family is definitely big on reading, but when I was in middle school, I just was not a happy reader because like I was getting exclusively young adult recommendations, and I was reading them and I was not connecting with the characters, and I was going through a lot of health issues at the time. So I was really looking for something to kind of have that escape, a fantasy or something. And something to make me laugh, especially. Barbara, you had mentioned that before, and I just remember being a middle schooler myself, wanting to dig into deeper issues while also getting that humor. But then I picked up a series called Skullduggery Pleasant, which was the biggest influence on me as a writer, and it was just hysterical. And the series goes from, the main character Valkyrie goes from 12 to 23 by the end. So, those beginning books were, I would consider upper middle grade, and I just found a home in them, and I just loved them. And so middle school, I did mostly read YA, and then when high school hit, I switched to exclusively middle grade, and I haven't stopped since.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
I just gotta find my way eventually.
Yeah, I like that. I was not expecting, you threw in like a twist ending there for me at the end. I like that. Paula, how about you? Big reader?
Yes. And first of all, I want that career, Kristiana. I want to be able to write the series that goes from 12 years old to 23. Can I have that, please? But sign me up. Yes, I was a huge reader. I went from Judy Blume, Mildred Taylor, Francine Pascal, um, basically right to a Stephen King, V.C. Andrews kind of thing. So I don't ever really remember reading young adult when I was younger. I went straight from, I guess, what would have been considered middle grade at that time to adult books.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm with you. I was the same exact way. And I would like, now I think, oh, I wonder what the librarian was thinking when I'd like, here are my 8 Stephen King books and I'm 10 years old, you know?
Yep.
Tori, how about you? Big reader?
I feel like
Oh,
we are
yeah. You
all,
said, yeah.
yeah, I feel like we're all a thumbprint of like the collective experiences that we have. We're products of our environment. So was I reading? Yeah, I was reading, but I don't think I was reading what was in the traditional canon. I do have to say that my mom, because we were talking about photos, like all these authors have photos of them as kids, as writers. My mom, she has a photo album that if you flip through it, it's like animation. You see little Tori with the blown out lollipop afro, and I'm chewing on a crayon while I'm trying to scribble something out. And then you flip through and you see, me as a tween. My friends are playing sports. I'm taking a time out and I'm writing something in a book. And you flip through it. And so writing is something that has always been with me. One of the reasons why it's because storytelling had hit me in my heart like Cupid's arrow bullseye. Now, going back to the canon, when I was a kid, I loved storytelling. However, there's that saying, we want kids to love books. What I discovered is if books don't love kids, kids won't love the books. So in my school, what was happening was intergenerationally, we were given books where people who looked like me, Black people, Latino people, we weren't in the books. Or if we were in the books, we were a negative stereotype, or we were dehumanized, or we were side characters. So you have to promise not to show this video to my mother, because I'm about to share I'm gonna share something that happened. She don't. Okay, all right. She hates when I share this, because our mothers, right? Our mothers want to say that we were born geniuses. We were born all made. Well, in the 3rd grade, I hated the books that I was forced to read so hard that I unplugged from school. And in June, I got left back. And then the next year, the same thing. Books didn't love me. I didn't love books. School didn't love me. I didn't love school. So my mom, she grabbed me, and not in a bad way, she grabbed me in a good way, and she said, listen, I'm gonna make a deal with you. Now this deal is crazy because we're talking about a single mom raising 4 kids, and we don't have money. My mom was on welfare. My mom made this deal. She said, I'll buy you any book if you read it. And I thought she was joking. So I said, any book. She said, any book. I said, comic books? She said, comic books. And that's where I dove deep down the rabbit hole. I started reading comics. Now this goes into the question, are comic books books, right? I also dove deep in the rabbit hole of rap, because rap was being invented, and a little known, in fact, my sister dated Biz Markie, the rapper.
Ooh, yeah.
So, I was falling in love with Rakim when he would write a rhyme and say, self-esteem makes it seem like the thought took years to build. And so I fell in love with hip hop and rap. I fell in love with comics, and I noticed something happening. We are products of our environments. We're sponges. All of that was coming out in my writing. And so people talk about that. Like Jacqueline Woodson, she talks about my book, Tight, and she says, I was riveted by the boy's journey to become his own kind of superhero. Superheroes are all in Tight, all in what lane, because there's comics. And also you find Secret Saturdays, my first book, a lot of it is in verse, where the boys write their thoughts and their emotions in freestyle rhymes. So yeah, I love to read, I love to write. But what do I love to read and I love to write? I like to, read what my village creates.
I love it. And we can get stories and words and inspiration from so many different things. It's not just books. And I like that. Yeah, that's great. So I think we have time I'm going to do one question for Kelly, and then I'm going to ask you a question all of you, and you are going to answer me with one word, okay? So just get ready for that. But Kelly, what do you think authors need to know about the 10 to 14-year-old reader? What do you want to tell us all?
It sounds like you guys really know your audience. I think that they need to, sometimes they need to see themselves. Sometimes they need to see what they're curious about. I think it was touched upon that the covers matter. Covers really matter. They need to feel that it's not a baby book. They really need to be proud to carry it around because it's not always super cool to be a reader. But it's, the culture of reading is growing, at least in our community right now. But, they're not prepared for addressing issues at a super high level. Our sixth graders are petrified when they see swear words, but they really do want to read about things that are a little edgy and new to them at the same time. So it sounds like you really understand the very fine line between, giving them something interesting and something to chew on, and also, really understanding their level of maturity.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, are you all ready? You know what? I'll be nice. You can answer with more than one word.
Come on, Shannon.
Or do you want the one-word challenge? Okay,
challenge.
Okay, do one word. Okay, what is the best thing about this age group? Barbara.
Ah! The best thing about this age group.
One word.
Come back to me. One word?
Yeah, that was 4 words. Come back to me.
Irony.
Irony. Okay, great. Kelly, how about you? Best thing about them?
I'm going to go with something like fluidity.
Ooh, I like that. Oh, that was a good one. Jess.
Hope.
Hope. That's a yes. There's so much hope in middle grade. Kristiana.
One word? Seriously?
That's not fair, right?
Y'all agreed. One word challenge.
Oh, I need to think.
Okay. Are you ready now?
She didn't let me think.
I didn't. You're right, Barbara. Okay, Kristiana.
And I had to go first.
Right.
Okay, how about relationships?
Okay, I like that. You redeemed yourself. You're good. Okay, Paula.
Ready.
Ready. Ooh, that's a good one. Tori, how about you?
Quickness.
Quickness. These are great. Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks, all our viewers. Thank you for watching us, and we hope that you found some inspiration with our 10 to 14-year-olds. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.